good morning. I'm Jacqueline Ganem DeFalco from Cape Ann ARTWaves, and we are part of we're a member show hosted by 1623 Studios. This will be our 24th episode of Cape Ann ARTWaves, which we started back in April. It is hosted by me and also Christine Fisher, and we have different artists every week. And that we are looking forward to hearing today from Sallie Strand. And after this interview is going to be available all over social media. So we'll recap that at the end. But I want to dive in with one of Cape Ann's newest artists because she is a recent transplant to the area, Miss Sallie Strand, who has landed on Rocky Neck. Welcome, Sallie, to Cape Ann ARTWaves.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
It's great. I'm so happy you accepted our invitation today. I know you've been in the middle of this big move to the area. So just to let the audience know up front, I know that you have recently moved to the Gloucester area, although it's not your first foot into the Gloucester area because you had a gallery, I know, last summer. But now you're going to become a permanent resident, and we're just really happy to have you here.
Thank you. I can't wait to actually move into my new house.
That's great. That's great. Right on Rocky Neck, I understand. So let's take a little trip down memory lane, not too far. You've had a varied career in a lot of different areas. And of course, the one that intrigues me the most before art is being a pastry chef. But I'll let you tell that story. And your art career officially began in 2015. So it happened, it seems that you were on the map pretty quickly. And so you must have had a head start, I would say, in some ways. So let's go back in history and tell us where art really started for you and how you got to where you are today. What was your journey?
Okay. Well, so I was creative my whole life. I never really thought I could be an artist per se because I can't draw. And I sort of was taking some continuing ed workshops and dabbling in art. And about maybe 15 years ago, I took a workshop out in Carmel, California, that was abstract. And I was like, oh, I could actually do this. And it was really fun. And I met some friends there and who lived in California, and we would get together once a year to paint. And that's about all I was painting at the time. And then we took a workshop in Truro, which was oil, the first time I had ever used oil too, and with Lisa Pressman. And it changed my life. I just loved the oil, and it felt, the pigment sticks that we were using the pigment is suspended in beeswax and linseed oil. So it did feel a lot like, frosting on a cake or something. And so it sort of was the perfect combination of how I had been a pastry chef and, branching into the art. And actually I have here, these are some silicone bowl scrapers that I use in my work, and a shaper, and then some palette knives. And even the brayer sort of feels like a rolling pin, even though it's, not really. But so a lot of these tools actually make me feel like I'm in the bakery as well. So so it just felt really comfortable.
Well, you jumped right in. So how did you because you've already received awards, you've had a number of shows. How did you make that big leap from 2015 to 2020?
So it's funny, when I first sort of quit my job and decided to be a full-time artist, I feel like it took me a couple of years to actually own calling myself an artist, without stuttering and saying, oh, I'm an artist, and then through that process, I take a lot of workshops, and there's a great community in the workshops. You meet a lot of people and you get a lot of information from them on what they did. And, I think a big part of it too is being able to talk about your work. So when I had open studios, and then when I had the gallery on Rocky Neck, you have a lot of opportunity to talk about your work. And then that also sort of helps you own your work. And then as you're making your work, you kind of understand what you're doing. And it just, I mean, it's part of the process of growing as an artist.
Mhm.
And a lot of artists are uncomfortable doing that. And you really, to kind of get yourself out there, you really have to spend, um, at the minimum, a third of your time marketing yourself,
Mhm.
getting out, applying to shows, just getting into different venues and seeing what works.
You read my mind, because I did want to ask you about that, but I can tell you that that's how we met. I would have
Right.
known nothing about you except walking into your gallery in Rocky Neck, and actually seeing your work in a gallery is powerful. I'm not somebody who necessarily would be, drawn to abstract work, but when I saw all your work together, it definitely felt like it was telling a series of stories, and it was very expressive, and really fun. And so I wanted to get to know you. I mean, I do think those two things go hand in hand. So that's great. But let's go back to some of your inspirations. I noticed in your biography a lot of different artists that you've studied with, and whose work you have sort of taken in to form your own style. And where did you even begin? Because there are a lot of abstract artists, so you must have. I can't even begin to guess how you decided how are you going to approach this, who you're going to study with. You were on quite a journey.
Well, I guess we picked Lisa Pressman first, mostly out of convenience because, my friends were coming in from California to take the workshop with me. So we didn't have, we sort of had summer time frame, and, there was a limited time in that frame, and that class just fit.
Mm.
And she has since become a really good friend of mine and a mentor. And I've taken a lot of workshops with her. And one of the things I think is her biggest gift is that, I've taken a lot of workshops where the instructor teaches you to paint like they paint. And that doesn't really help you get your own voice, especially when you're starting out.
Mm.
And she helps you figure out what your voice is. And I think that's a really hard thing to do as a teacher. And she attracts amazing artists in her class. So I've developed a ton of friends through taking her workshops. When I was at my other place in Lincoln Studios in Waltham, I hosted her to teach workshops there. So that was really fun as well.
That's great.
And
And
then,
let me just ask you, what was the workshop here that your friends came to from California?
oh, that was the workshop, the first workshop with Lisa, in oil sticks and cold wax.
Mm.
And that was in Cape Cod.
Oh, Cape Cod. Okay, gotcha.
So, and then I guess through meeting artists in these workshops, you find out what instructors they've taken from and what they like about it. And so then I learned about some of the other, like Audrey Phillips and Krista Harris and Steve Imony. And they all at one point had worked together, and they all teach in acrylic. And a lot of the workshops are in Florida at the Atlantic Center for the Arts. And that's another thing I love about workshops is it's a different focus. You work through your problems more because it's, like usually at least a 5-day long workshop. And so, it's sort of 9 to 5, 5 days a week, and you can't just get frustrated and go home. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I think that helps you push through some of your struggles. And then you have someone that, can help you talk through what's going on and what you're struggling with. And I think it helps you develop your skill.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were on the fast track. You took a lot in a short period of time, right? That's great. Well, I guess, once you decide that's what you're going to do, you really just have to do it.
Right. Well, also, I don't have an art background. I don't, I didn't study art in college. So I think it helps to learn technique this way as well. And I guess in some ways too, some people say I have a fearlessness in my work that maybe that comes from not having all the criticism from going to art school.
I can personally relate to that. So I do understand that a lot. So moving into this realm of abstract painting, which is a big world, how did you then find that voice that you were talking about? Like, how did you settle on your style and how would you describe it?
Um, it's funny because sometimes I like work by other people and I sort of experiment and try to go in that direction and it doesn't work. Like, you can only paint your own voice, and abstract work is sort of what is you're feeling at the time or what comes through, and that has to come from you.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I think I'm really influenced by my surroundings. It's my work is not it doesn't show like landscape, but it definitely has an atmosphere to it. And some of them have a lot of energy to them. It's very expressive movement in the paintings.
Yes. And some of the paintings that we're going to show, it would be great if you could specifically speak to those.
Sure.
The stills, so that we can see where they fit. You've mentioned energy. I think one of them definitely feels that way. But just if you can sort of speak to those, that would help me, when we look at the different pieces of work.
Yeah, and I think some of the newer paintings definitely have the atmosphere of Gloucester. There's so much character in the landscape here, and I think that I can see those in my newer work. So I think we have some of those. And actually, one of them is, no, I can't see. This one is one of the stills,
Mm.
and that one I could talk about that one. I was sort of channeling Gerhard Richter, and he has a lot of sort of smearing, where he drags a big tool across the canvas. And so I was sort of playing around with that. I started with some really vibrant colors and just kept adding layers and layers. And I had actually shown them at Open Studios in Waltham last year. And then, after I moved, I looked at them again and I decided they weren't done yet. And I think sometimes the paintings speak to you, and sometimes they have to sit, and then you realize you have more to say in the painting. So there was a bunch of them that I went over and did some work on.
And that was actually one of my questions, was going to be about process. So you really did a good job, a good segue there. And the first question really is, how do you know when it's done? And then the other question I wanted to ask you about process is some of the problems you've had to solve that potentially made you go back to a piece over and over again.
Yeah, so I think sometimes you can, like, I know sometimes I've had a really frustrating day in the studio and I go home and I come back and I'm actually surprised, and I feel like the studio fairies were there overnight or something, because you can kind of get so involved in the process that you don't gain a lot of perspective. So I think that it's good to stop and step back and go away and come back and look at your work with fresh eyes. And sometimes if you're stuck and you're not sure if it's done, it's good to just let it sit for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And when I work in oil, you kind of have to do that anyway, because oil takes a long time to dry, and if they get too wet, you're just smushing paint around. So you do have to wait till you go back to work on it. And I think some of the problems that can come up is maybe the marks are too similar, and you need to have more variation, or maybe the marks are all the same width. Maybe it's too busy, and sometimes I don't know, sometimes the color palette doesn't work and you might throw in a color that you think is completely off and then somehow that works. And so sometimes having kind of like a muddy color
Mm,
sounds like it wouldn't be a good thing is actually a good thing because it makes all the more beautiful colors stand out and it kind of gives it some structure.
mm.
So I don't know. I think those are some of the things that I've learned through experience. And in the beginning, when I started painting, I didn't, sometimes I thought a painting was done and I didn't know why it was done. And I think with experience, you sort of learn why a painting works and why it doesn't work.
Gotcha. All right. Well, no, that's a learning process, I think, for all of us. You don't want to make it so busy that you've lost the soul of it, I guess, as you go. I don't know if we actually landed on a word, an expression, or a statement that you think describes your work, but I would like to hear that from you because everyone has a feeling about, what captures the essence of their work, their style. How would you describe it?
I think my work is very expressive. I think even in the more subtle pieces, there's a lot of movement and energy.
Mhm.
So it's sort of a dynamic energy in the paintings, but and some of the energy is not just in the marks on the canvas, but in the color palette.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I think yeah.
Okay, that's a good way to capture it. And it would be considered abstract, obviously. That's the school that you stay in, right? You haven't varied from that, have you, since you started?
Expressionism, yes.
Okay. Okay, great. So let's turn to the times we're living in. We've been through one of the most challenging times we could ever even think about going through in our lifetimes. And you made a huge move and made a huge decision to move here this year. That being doing a move is, as we know, one of the more stressful things in life.
Right.
But you have a lot to look forward to. But as we now look toward basically what will be another year of staying close to home and not getting on an airplane, or at least not as much as we used to. Let's put it that way. Uh, what do you hope to look forward to this year? What's your kind of goal, and what influence has this pandemic had on you?
Well, yeah, so I had bought my house before the pandemic. I bought my house at the end of last season, and it's still not finished construction yet. It's almost there, so I'll be moving in about a week or so. I think artists have an advantage during the pandemic because they're used to spending a lot of time alone. I will miss taking workshops, but I have joined. The Pressman is with a group of other instructors and doing some online classes. So I'm going to stay connected that way. And I was supposed to do an artist residency at the Vermont Studio Center this year, and that got canceled. So I'm hoping that that will still happen next year. Um, it's another good way to connect with artists. So I think, I'll be happy to be in my new home. I'll have a studio there, and I have a studio on Main Street in Gloucester. So I think I'm going to keep my oil and my acrylic in two different studios. And I just look forward to setting it up and yeah, and not traveling and just spending time in my studio. But I think the other part of your question, I think I'm going to focus on doing more online marketing because all I was in about 5 shows this year and all of them were canceled. So it's just harder to get your work out there when the galleries aren't open or people are afraid to go there.
Mhm.
And with being stuck at home, I think they need art on their walls.
I agree. I agree. And I think for the people that have taken the time to put their work out there, they've been rewarded for it.
Yes.
Yes, indeed. But you have a new role, I understand, on Rocky Neck.
Yes, I'm excited. I'm just got voted in to be a new member of the board at the Rocky Neck Art Colony.
Congratulations. You'll have to roll up your sleeves on that one, Sallie, for sure. And they have a wonderful new executive director, so you'll enjoy working with her, I'm sure.
To meet
Forgive
her.
my voice. I have a little tickle in my throat, but on that note, we're going to have to sign off in a moment. So I just wanted to thank you so much for your time today. Wish you the best of luck on Cape Ann. This is a great way to start.
Thank you.
And this Cape Ann ARTWaves interview is coming to a close, but you can find it on 1623.org and their YouTube channel. It'll be on promoted on Facebook, and it will be on Instagram, and it will be on channel 12 throughout the week of November 8th, I believe is when this one will be broadcast. So thank you again, Sallie, for taking the time today.
Thank you, Jackie. My pleasure. So happy to be here. Take care.